Some of them do get jobs, yes. That's what I want for Natalie. I understand that, Mrs. Flanagan, but it's not working out for her here. It's only been 2 days. Surely even a usual child would have had some adjustment to a new setting. Mr. Purdy grunts. Mr. Purdy is the kind of man who can make a grunt seem polite. My husband and I, my mom continues, have done a lot of research on this, and we believe this program, your program, is the best in the country. You are turning out kids who can function in the world. That's kind of you to say, but, and I don't think, my mother is unstoppable, that we will be able to replicate your success elsewhere. So I wonder if there isn't some way we could make this work. Mr. Purdy shakes his head. She can't stay here now, but if you wish, I can put you in touch with someone who might be able to help Natalie. Help her get ready, my mother offers. She sits up straighter in her chair. Yes. Mr. Purdy smiles, his ladylike hands fingertip to fingertip. He tips them toward my mother like he's rolling a ball to her. Then he swivels in a squeaky chair to get a folder behind him. He copies a number down on a slip of paper and hands it to my mother. My mother looks at the page, then folds it closed. Mr. Purdy stands up to signal the end of our meeting. I stand up too. My mother does not. Mr. Purdy and I sit down again. I'm proud of my mother for this, proud of her for getting all she can from this man, but I'm angry too. No matter what this little paper says, my mother will do it. So that line right there, that is part of your big question for these chapters, okay? So Mr. Purdy hands her a piece of paper. No matter what this little paper says, my mother will do it. So what does that mean? Okay, so that's your big question. So think about what Moose just told us about how Natalie has been in different places, and none of these schools, none of these places seem to be helping her. So now Mr. Purdy gives the mom a piece of paper, and no matter what it says, Moose's mom will do. So just kind of think about what does that actually mean, okay? Once she sent away for voodoo dolls and carefully followed the instructions some witch doctor in the West Indies wrote about how to relieve Natalie's condition. Another time she took Natalie to a church where everybody stood up and waved their arms. She read the Bible to her for 2 hours every day while Natalie sat staring at her right hand, as if there were a movie playing on her palm, and she couldn't bear to pull herself away. And then there was a school where my mom taught music classes for free until they let Natalie in. And when they did, Natalie just sat in the fancy classroom, tearing bits of paper into tiny pieces. With Natalie, there never is a happy ending, but my mom won't ever believe that. Forgive me, Mr. Purdy. I'd like to know what happened, my mom says, her brown eyes staring him down. I had hoped Mr. Flanagan would be here with you. Mr. Purdy looks at me. My husband is working the evening shift. Of course, Mr. Purdy nods. He looks around his cluttered office as if he's searching for a way out. Natalie is, I would say, unresponsive. He peeks at my mother to see if this will do. My mother doesn't blink. I'm afraid there was a bit of a skirmish over a box of buttons and some unfortunate behavior. Your daughter is 10, you said, Mrs. Flanagan? Mr. Purdy's watery eyes are suddenly sharply focused on my mom. Yes, my mother says, her white-gloved fingers closed into a tight fist around the handle of her green pocketbook. She gets up early? She likes to watch the sunrise, I say. Mr. Purdy looks at me, then back at my mom. As you can see, we are located in Presidio Heights. It's a fine residential neighborhood, but perhaps not an ideal spot for someone like your daughter. His voice trails off. My mother waits. And though our neighbors are largely encouraging of what we're trying to do here, we must be cautious about taking children who might strain the relationships we've worked so hard to build. Children who are, one might say, overly vocal. She screamed? My mother asks. Yes, she did, for the better part of an hour, I'm afraid. Your daughter's voice is quite shrill, and coupled with her early rising habits. But you think this is something that, my mother holds up the folded slip of paper, Mrs. Kelly can help us with. Indeed I do, Mr. Purdy says, standing up again. He has his goodbye smile on and he's looking at his watch. And why is this different for boys? She asks. The boys' cottage is located in the old maid's quarters, which is farther from the neighbors. Mr. Purdy sits down again. He sketches a quick map for us. It looks like a bad pirate's map with X's marked for the treasure. Did you take her buttons away? I ask. My mom looks at me, then back at Mr. Purdy. We can't have a child who screams like a banshee at 5:15 in the morning in a neighborhood like this. Now, if you'd like to spend some time working with Mrs. Kelly, there's a good possibility she can help Natalie bring this problem under control. I can't promise you, of course, but if Mrs. Kelly feels that Natalie is ready for our program, we'll consider her application again in May. My mother is up now. offering her hand to Mr. Purdy to shake. Of course, my husband and I appreciate all the help you've given us. In the waiting room, Natalie's legs are open the way my mother always tells her not to sit. She is seated on a needlepoint brocade chair, and I see by the way her finger is moving that she is counting the stitches in the seat. We wait until she finishes the last stitch at the bottom before she starts again with the first stitch at the top. Our timing is perfect. We've had a lot of practice at this, my mother and I. I grab the old brown suitcase that says Natalie Flanagan on all 6 sides, and we hustle Natalie out the door. She is walking behind us now, a teenage girl acting as if she's 8.